Having a wild canine as your companion. Here's your look at the new Super 7 G.I. Joe Ultimates Snake Eyes Elite Commando. Snake Eyes may not be able to speak, but his G.I. Joe Ultimates figure pretty much speaks for itself. Based on his appearance at the beginning of A Real American Hero, this 7-inch scale fully articulated Snake Eyes Ultimates figure comes with interchangeable hands and a variety of accessories, including multiple weapons, a jetpack, and a furry best friend, Timber. Be sure to pull the trigger for the mysterious and dangerous Snake Eyes Ultimates figure for your G.I. Joe collection. Now then, before anyone gets rescued by a blind woodsman, let's take the tape measure and see how tall Snake Eyes stands. As for Timber, though, Timber's only going to be about 3 inches in height. He goes to about, midway of the thigh of Snake Eyes, but Snake Eyes himself, though, stands 7 inches in height, or the figure's 18 centimeters tall. And while I may not have any 25th anniversary Snake Eyes to bring in, I can at least bring in the other G.I. Joe Ultimate figures we've looked at. Here's what he looks like with Cobra Commander. Here's what he looks like with Duke, which I guess Duke in this case is just a tad bit taller than Snake Eyes, but not by much. And the one that's the biggest of the batch, here's what he also looks like with the Cobra Bat, the Battle Android Trooper. The only one that really does stand out in this, now that we've finally, we've not almost finished the wave, we have to still look at Snake Eyes, of course, but now that Snake Eyes is the final figure of the first wave, the only one that does really stand out like a robotic thumb is the Cobra Bat. It seems a bit out of place to have included that, but I'm so glad that they did. For the figure's accessories, Snake Eyes does come included with the radioactive canister that contains the crystals of death. That's the name that they actually give it. In this case, it's not completely contained because the radioactive essence starts seeping its way out, and Snake Eyes, poor Snake Eyes, gets sick and falls ill. Of course, the blind woodsman is the one that saves Snake Eyes and eventually does give the wolf the name Timber. But I do like the idea that they actually did include the canister, and while it doesn't open up, you don't have to worry about any radioactive leakage. What you do at least get is a Cobra logo there on the outside of it. It doesn't open up, it doesn't do anything, but it's just a nice accompanying piece to go along with this classic-looking Snake Eyes. Now, he does have technically the hands to hold the canister. He does come with these gripping hands. The hands don't so much hold the canister as you sort of just rest the canister on top of it. As you saw in the opener of this review, it's actually best served to actually be displayed Snake Eyes with sort of both hands sort of cupping and holding the canister like a football. Again, it just easily involves you having to swap the hands out. So right now he does have closed fists. We can easily just pop those out. And I've noticed of the G.I. Joes and the Cobras now from this first wave, Snake Eyes seems to be the easiest to remove the hands. So what I just did at the beginning of this review, I'm going to rinse and repeat now. Sort of just holding the canister, again, like a football. And then we're going to go ahead and just bring Snake Eyes' hand around and sort of then holds it on both sides. It's fairly effective. I mean, it does the job. It gets the job done, I should say. So there's those as the options available. The figure also then comes included with a couple of things we've already gotten from Duke before. The figure, for example, comes included, with a communicator. Happens to be the exact same one that came included with Duke, has also the same 802 on the top of it. It looks like they've simply just reused the same mold. Nothing is different between the two. And the other thing that's also shared between the two figures is they have the classic cartoon laser rifle. This is Snake Eyes, this is Duke's, exactly the same. I think, again, in the cartoon, it would be a lighter shade of beige. It isn't so much the darker, dingier brown that we're getting right here, but the fact that they actually come included with cartoon accurate cannons, or cartoon accurate laser rifles, is a fun touch. Glad to see that they included it. Snake Eyes then also gets this fairly futuristic pistol, pew pew pew. Kind of looks like a spaceship. And this, of course, can be something that'd be carried around in his hand. Speaking of hands, the figure also comes included with a trigger firing hand, comes included with a gripping hand. This hand is actually better suited for, like, for example, the laser rifle. We just simply take that and fit that into his hand like that. And of course, you can then attach that, replace it with, well, I would say either one of his hands, but really this hand here. Don't worry, he also has a hand for then this side. The figure also comes included, not including Timber, with a jetpack. When I think jetpacks, I tend to think either Duke from the movie, or I tend to think of Stalker. Stalker seems to always be the Joe that's jetting around in a jetpack. I think, in fact, he is in the beginning first episode of The Masked Device. I think him, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes are assigned to break in to see if the fortress or the place that's holding the Masked Device is impenetrable. Actually, no, it's not the Masked Device. No. But anyways, they're skilled and tasked in order to break in and see if they can actually break in the maximum security. It isn't so much maximum security, like literally 3 Joes get in there. But you got yourself a purple jetpack. It doesn't have thrust necessarily attached on the bottom of it. Basically, it shows you where the thrusters would be attached onto. I'm kind of surprised, in fact, that they didn't include something that could have attached onto the end nozzles, so it looked like Snake Eyes was actually, in fact, flying through the skies. Similar to what we looked at with Duke, you simply just bring the arms back here for Snake Eyes. You're just going to then slide up the straps. No pegs dealing at all here in this case. The older G.I. Joes would, of course, have had pegs on any one of the backpacks, but not these ones. These new ones actually have real practical purposes. So you're going to strap them onto the back. And I guess you could say that this is Snake Eyes, matching the purple that's on the back of the jetpack to the purple that he has on the front of his body, and of course in his visor as well. While he is certainly packed with a jetpack, let's go ahead and look at Timber here. Timber looks really good. I like the look of Timber quite a lot. The only thing that's really missing here is a fun touch to the episode in which Snake Eyes first discovers Timber, is a little bear trap. Or is it a bear trap, a wolf trap? It's an animal trap. It's basically caught on Timber, and Snake Eyes ends up freeing the wolf, and then the wolf becomes his best friend till the end. I like the detailing that they've incorporated here to Timber. The colors are quite good. You've got the more darker coloring of the gray, and even more darker coloring of the gray for the top of the fur that runs basically like just along this strip here, and it comes off then to the end of the tail. Fairly surprised to see as much articulation on this one as well. There's articulation in the neck. You can move it up and down. You can kind of move it back and forth. There's articulation also in the head, so you can rotate that back and forth a little bit up and down. Tail articulation also as well. And there's posability also on the front and the hind legs of the wolf. You can move these only back, forward and back. They only hinge just a little bit out as well. There's a hinge on the back hind of the leg. And there's also articulation on the tiny little paw as well. Look at the tiny little paws. They're adorable. The front are a little more benefited by having some additional articulation. You can actually hinge these ones out. I'm surprised actually that these ones don't move as far back, but these ones at least have a little bit of additional posability. There's a hinge also here and a hinge also in the foot. So it's basically the same on the front that is on the back. Nice looking Timber though. Again, the only thing I really would have included for Timber is probably like an animal trap. Just again, a reference to that specific episode. Taking now those Snake Eyes, we're going to go ahead and remove his jetpack. We don't need to see that for the rest of this review. Well, we'll probably bring it back for the end of this review, but we're going to slide it off for right now. While we're also on the topic, I mean, this is a kind of a side tangent, but while we're also on the topic of looking at all of his accessories now, I wanted to bring back in the little binoculars that Cobra Commander did come included with. Lately, being as I've gotten back into watching G.I. Joe, all these new Super 7 G.I. Joe Ultimate figures have ultimately caused me to go back, twist my rubber arm, and look at like some of the earlier G.I. Joe episodes I love so much. It's always like the 5-part episodes that I really like the most. Mass Device, The Weather Dominator, Pyramid of Darkness, and Arise, Serpentor, Arise. Don't even think about Dragonfire. Oh, Dragonfire is a horrible one. But anyways, one thing I did want to mention, though, just recently rewatching Arise, Serpentor, Arise, Cobra Commander, in fact, uses these binoculars at the beginning when they're first penetrating the G.I. Joe headquarters. Cobra Commander is actually looking at this. I think when he first spots Sergeant Slaughter. It's kind of interesting, the fact we just finished having a look at that. As for Snake Eyes himself, again, one thing you won't be getting here with Snake Eyes is not the single Geordi LaForge visor across the front of his face. Classic-looking Snake Eyes from the earlier Mass Device episode would have actually had an all-blue clad Snake Eyes with now purple goggles here on the front. He's got these tiny little marks on the front of his mask that probably would allow the character of Snake Eyes to actually be able to breathe. And he does have like a fairly simple looking body. When you look at this and then you look at the other G.I. Joe Ultimate figures we've had a look at, Snake Eyes is sort of more the simplistic looking design. But, again, like it works really well for the character. This is exactly the way he looks in those earlier episodes. These straps, by the way, are softer plastic. They're attached what seems to be on the tops of his shoulders, and they're attached down below here by his belt. They don't limit necessarily the articulation, although, again, I will admit that the articulation on these characters are very limited. You're not going to be getting a lot of articulation. I know there were some people that commented that the posability on these G.I. Joe Ultimate figures was lacking. I mean, if you were to really look at what the extent of Snake Eyes can actually do, even if you just look at his torso only goes far back this much, and you can also bring it forward. But that's it. That's all you can really do. Again, you're really not going to be putting this guy in any karate chopping poses. Maybe you are, I don't know. But I don't think the figure necessarily needs a whole lot of articulation if it really means that it translates to a more cartoon-looking character. Like I said, he does have, again, all the little pockets and stuff you would have had in the cartoon. 2 purple ones on the front. Maybe they're holding tiny little playing cards. I don't know. He's got a pocket there also on the side for no apparent reason whatsoever. And one also on the other side of his body. Other than that, and just the purple pockets that he has, well, only on this side right here, the figure, again, is very barren when it comes to the kind of molding that we've already gotten with Cobra Commander, we've gotten with Duke, and we especially got with the Cobra Bat. There's a lot less of it happening here for Snake Eyes. One thing I certainly would say, I'm not going to fault necessarily the posability on Snake Eyes, but one thing I would say, you probably can already see this. If you look at the back of his body, I don't notice it as much from the front, but if you look at it from the back, the top of his torso seems to be a darker shade of blue than the lower half of his torso. I'm not really sure why. They may have just changed the plastic that they would have used. It seems like his arms are a little bit more closer in color, but his torso, very obviously, I noticed at least, had a darker blue than the rest of his lower half of his body. It's close enough, but it was certainly something I did notice. For the articulation on Snake Eyes, his head rotates all the way around. It looks up. And again, by me saying it looks up, that's as far up as it's going to look. It looks down, and you can also rock the head back and forth as well. As for the arms do come out. No worries, really, unlike the Bat, where I was worrying really about that little patch. And I noticed recently also, just after the review of the Bat, that a little bit more paint has flaked off that little Cobra patch. So just be careful with that. Arms, though, rotate all the way around. There's a bicep swivel on Snake Eyes, only still possessing a single hinge in the elbow, and that's okay for me. Rotation back and forth for the hands, or the arms. You can rotate the hand all the way around, and there's also a hinge there as well. Again, you're going to get limitations when it comes to this, but again, really, to what extent do you need this guy to be superposable? He has a crunch where he needs it. He has a waist swivel, I think, where he needs it. And he has, all the additional posability that you'd expect with any other figure line. The only thing he really does lack, I guess, is he doesn't have a double hinge in the knee, and he doesn't have a double hinge on the elbow. That's it. I guess that would be one thing I think these figures probably could have used a little bit more. Maybe additional posability right here. Other than that, no, I'm pretty overall happy with the amount of posability, the amount of articulation that this guy does have. Anyways, though, he does split in the legs. That's as far of a split as you can get with this guy. He goes forward on the legs, goes back. Now, again, when it comes to his back, you're only going to be able to move the leg this far back, but you can at least compensate it by bringing his knee back, and you also have the articulation in the ankle there as well. The lower leg, while there is a hinge here, doesn't really give you much rocking. You can't actually, don't try to rotate it. I don't know if I was expressing that in the earlier reviews. While there's only a hinge here, you can't, normally you'd be able to rotate like a leg on a figure if there's a hinge. Not the case here with these Super 7 Ultimate figures. You only get really a single hinge and that's it. You do, though, at least get articulation in the boots, so you can rotate them all the way around. Hinging up and down on the ankle, and there's an ankle rocker. Okay, so I have already mentioned a couple of times when we looked at these Ultimate figures, sometimes there's loose things about the figure. So here's what's loose on Snake Eyes for me right now. Elbow on the one side, and I think this leg right here, it's a little loose on the ankle. So far, that's not bad. Considering the other G.I. Joe figures, which was the one that had the loosest arm? Was it Cobra Commander? I can't remember now. But anyways, I haven't had as much problems necessarily with Snake Eyes. But again, something I did express in the earlier reviews, it shouldn't be the case when you get these figures out of the packaging that they already have developed loose ankles, loose arms, loose elbows. Why is that the case? These things are inside plastic prisons. They shouldn't even have loose articulation points. And yet, unfortunately, many cases when it comes to these Super 7 Ultimate figures, getting them immediately out of packaging as I'm bringing all the other figures in right now, they should not be loose already. I guess the Bat probably was the loosest. The Bat's a little loose in the top of the ankle or loose at the top of the thigh. But yeah, again, overall, I'm really happy with this line. I think they've picked a good bunch of characters. Again, I would really question why they included a Bat. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy the fact that they would have included Bat, but I would have thought maybe for a first wave, we would have gotten maybe not a Destro, because I think Destro would be one that is too big of a wig that they probably could have kept for a wave 2 or wave 3. I think, in fact, we are getting ourselves a Destro for wave 2, possibly even a wave 3. I probably would have maybe swapped out Again, I don't want to say I would have swapped out the bat because I really like the look of the bat. It's just the odd choice to include that for the first wave. And I guess maybe that's probably what they're going to be doing. They're going to be including kind of like the more older characters, like these three right here, and then throwing like a more newer character in, like the bat. But overall, like if I was to look at this line for at least the first wave that I've tackled, I would say like my favorite figure from this wave is probably Duke. And I even though I'm disappointed, I'm still disappointed that there's not more detail on Cobra Commander's face. I think I would say Duke and Cobra Commander are my top two favorite, and the bat is fantastic. Snake Eyes is fantastic. They're all fantastic. A great wave of G.I. Joe figures if you haven't already had the chance to pick these ones up. Just jogging my G.I. Joe memory, I think it was the Ultimate Relay Star that they've asked the Joes to try to penetrate the facility. And of course, then Snake Eyes, Scarlet, and Stalker. Only 3 G.I. Joes it took to actually get inside the facility. We then see the Relay Star. The Relay Star is then what's used to get the mass device to then be able to be used all over the world. Before, of course, they have to get those 3 resources again, like the Crystals of Death. I'm not actually displaying here Snake Eyes in final looks with the Crystal of Death canister. I mean, I'm sure that could be something I will be displaying with the figure when eventually this guy goes onto my shelf with all the rest of my G.I. Joe Ultimate figures. One thing I'm sure this guy is probably going to get down the road is maybe a convention exclusive. Alluding to the fact he does come included with the Cobra canister, you got to believe that Super 7 will at some point re-release this guy with a canister, and then of course they're going to probably give him like the glowing red treatment. They've done this countless times already. We're remolding figures. The one that comes to my mind the most is always Lion-O. They seem to really get a lot of mileage out of Lion-O's mold. I'm probably sure they're going to do the exact same thing with Snake Eyes. And rest assured, I'm sure we're going to be getting ourselves a radioactive Snake Eyes as either a release on their site or release on comic book sites, or they're going to be releasing this guy as a convention exclusive. Whether he's going to come include with Timber. If he does, I think there's a good opportunity then to include the trap, the animal trap that wasn't included with Timber in the first place. But what do you guys think of Snake Eyes? Let me know down below in the comments section. 2 questions I can throw out to you guys as well is of the characters we've looked at, of the 4 figures that made up this wave, the Super 7 G.I. Joe Ultimates, what would you say is your favorite? Let me know down below in the comments section. And a further tacked on question, if you don't mind answering too. What's your favorite 5-part miniseries for G.I. Joe? Is it again the Mass Device, the Weather Dominator, the Pyramid of Darkness, or is it Arise, Serpentor, Arise? I wonder how many people will actually say Operation Dragonfire. No, don't say Operation Dragonfire. The only thing that was good about Operation Dragonfire was it first was the episode that introduced, first of all, it brings back Cobra Commander, but it's the first time we get ourselves an armored Cobra Commander, which I actually like the look of that armored Cobra Commander, and it also introduces Python Patrol. I kind of always had a thing for Python Patrol. But what was your favorite 5-part miniseries of G.I. Joe, the Real American Hero? Let me know down below in the comments section. Certainly as well, if you guys are interested to pick up Snake Eyes or any of the other G.I. Joe Ultimate figures, I will provide the link down below. That will take you on over to Entertainment Earth. It so happens to be the place where this guy behind the camera picked up just recently his G.I. Joe Ultimate figures. It could be very much the same place where you guys get your G.I. Joe Ultimate figures for as well. If you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, even though we are wrapping up things right now for G.I. Joe, there may be more Super 7 stuff coming your way. But make sure the key to that on not missing out on any of the new content is that by hitting the subscribe button, yes, and by turning on the bell notification, those 2 things go hand in hand to ensure that you're always going to be in the know when new videos are on the go. I rhymed, wrapping things up. Lots of things coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.